We are based in Nairobi, and we conduct migration research in the whole of Africa, and we partner with different organizations, including Red Cross and Red Crescent actors. So we are a regional initiative, and we try as much as possible to really build capacity of national societies. We have a team of researchers, we have a team of program managers, we actually have very good expertise as a team to be able to carry out research across the region. And the idea here is we try as much as possible to really bridge research, operation, and a policy for greater humanitarian impact. Next slide, please. Now, I have a question. Who shapes migration knowledge in Africa? Who? Who really, really shapes migration knowledge in Africa? All of us seated here. Who really defines migration research? Very pertinent questions that we've always asked ourselves. And normally in any setting we go in, it's a very clear question that we try as much as possible to get answers, but oftentimes we don't get like a very straightforward answer. Whose voices are included? And whose realities are reflected? I have a very perfect example. Anybody in the room with lived experience or lived realities? Anybody here who has been a migrant before? Anybody here who is maybe, let's say, for example, from a specific camp, let's say in Ghana or somewhere across Africa, who is able to even share with us insights based on the topic that you have today? Anybody in the room? You can raise your hand. 1, 2. Good. Oftentimes, we go into meetings, we ask this question, and nobody will raise their hand. We are talking about policies, we are talking about making use of evidence, but you don't really bring the people with their voices, the people who've gone through these realities, to really share their experiences. Okay? Next slide, please. I don't know if you can see my slides, but something has changed in the font. But my next slide is actually just giving you insights into our paper, which highlights what we call an extractive research, where migrants and practitioners are often treated as sources of data, not contributors of knowledge. Is it true or it's not? Is it true that migrants and practitioners are often treated as sources of data, not contributors to knowledge in different contexts? We can get answers after that separately. But one of the things that this creates is a very dangerous disconnect where we have policies being developed that become technically sound. Amazing, amazing policies. Well-structured, amazing fonts, very well and nice photos embedded into them, but practically disconnected from reality. We should always ask ourselves why. And one of the things, and one of the reports that we've been able to go through is we came to realize that only 8% of research reflects Global South authorship. 8%. I will let that sink in. Only 8% of research reflects Global South authorship. For every 1% or 0 point something percent of research being done in Africa, 8% is authored by countries in the Global South. Why? Has anyone ever asked themselves that question and answered it themselves? Next slide, please. Next slide. which brings us to the question of who funds research. And oftentimes, the people who fund research shape what? The people who fund research, what do they shape? Yes? They shape policy. But they also shape what gets studied. True or not true? I don't know. I have the funds. I come to the University of Ghana, and this is the topic that you'd like to get or to, you carry out research on. And often, priorities reflect destination countries, not migrant realities. Again, something to reflect or ask ourselves. But then also, at the same time, we are faced with a lot of barriers where we have barriers on language, we have barriers on visas, especially with the countries in the global south. We are specifically excluded, or the African voices are specifically excluded. But sometimes when we try to get these answers, we do not. But research is carried, authored, published, and policies are driven based off the same. But then, migrants themselves, have you ever asked yourselves how they are treated in the course of all this process? We've done research in different countries. I can say around 22 countries, no, 24 countries. Globally, we've carried out research and interviewed one-on-one migrants in camps, those in transit, and all that, up to the tune of around 800 in the region of Africa, but also globally. And something has always come out. They are treated as objects of study. Come in, you have your research tools, you have all these set of questions, and voila, you have the information you need. That's it, shape out. Next slide, please. So, what really needs to change? Anyone? Just 2 slides here. I'm actually wrapping up. What needs to change? Research, and maybe we'll use the word must, respond to migrants' actual questions, not the other way around. And we must value contextual intelligence, not just academic credentials. Contextual intelligence goes a very long way. Been there, done that, 800, now up to almost to the tune of 1,000 migrants we've interviewed in the global south and also continentally. We really have to value contextual intelligence, not just academic credentials. And third, inclusion must start from design. And I'm happy that I've had this from different speakers who've been here. Not at the end, but we produce the same exclusions. Next slide. So as I wrap up, what I would like to mention is the hub, we were designed to really address some of these challenges. We are happy to partner with different organizations in the region. Currently, we are based in Nairobi. We are part of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, and we are really happy to work with everyone. We have a set of programs where we're working with different volunteers, staff, professors, and we are open to collaborate. We can go on and go on, but I'm available and I'm able to speak and share more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we go straight on over to Michel de Bruy, who's talking about level telling fields, which is an intriguing notion.
Okay, I hope I can have the slides. So I'm Michel de Bruy. It's difficult to pronounce for the most of you, but if you know Kevin De Bruyne, who is playing, or has playing in Manchester, then you know him very well. Yeah, I'm coordinator of 2 Horizon research projects, and I will tell you a little bit about the research that we have done and what we have found, how to create that cooperation. We discussed this morning already the cooperation. So, may I have the slides, please? The second slide. Okay. My paper will, I hope that everyone gets the paper, essentially explores how drawing on different perspectives, experiences and backgrounds, one can develop research, policy projects that enjoy broad support. That's the main question also of this conference. So because research and policies are always and usually top-down. This is clear for policy, but it is not always clear for research. Within the social science, we are familiar with the participatory action research. In other fields, scientific fields, participation is much less prevalent. But even in social science, there's always a top-down element. If you look at the Horizon projects, they are supposed to be participatory, but the choice of the subject, how the research is conducted, and what happens to the results are, broadly speaking, top-down. So how do we respond to this challenge? Is it possible? Is it really possible to build a bridge between policies, target groups, and experts? So this paper is based on practical experience and participation, but also on those 2 different research projects. And the first opportunities developed the level telling field, and the second, based on the level telling field, developed an alliance of knowledge. I present first the different perspectives. You see already the picture, with the question how to bridge them. Then I go into the level telling field, a procedure to bridge, and then further to the outcome. So I started with this picture. A photo that I already discussed here in January. So here we see the former German minister recruiting nurses. Why I'm showing this photo? Next slide. Now, this photo consists of several narratives. There's a migration narrative, which posits that only work-related migration is possible. That's what the former minister said. There is the win-win narrative. Ghana is relieved of its surplus of young people, and Germany has its necessary nurses. You have the story of the nurses themselves. On the one hand, the story of insufficient pay and investment in healthcare. And on the other hand, you have, linked to this, the opportunity to support your families through labor migration. You have also the story of the WHO and the International Council of Nurses, who have placed Ghana and other countries on the red list, and a warning of a ticking bomb in Ghana, a total lack of nurses. And yet, said the ICN, Ghana persists by signing contracts with various countries. So if you're looking at all those narratives, how do you bridge between all those perspectives? How do you come to a kind of common ground between all those different perspectives, coming from the government, coming from the WHO, coming from the nurses, and so on? So that is why we started from opportunities, a project about narratives on migration. We said this morning already a lot about co-production. But co-production is not so much that you bring people together and looks, okay, the dialogue will develops and evolves. No, that's not really co-production. And someone said this morning also we need formats. And that is what we have done in Opportunities, looking for a framework. How can we create a method to bridge all those different perspectives, a structure. And that's the level telling field. If you're looking at those different perspectives and narratives, you see that there is no level playing field. One story carries more weight than another. One voice is more heard than another. And some voices are barely heard of all. So you could say in these stories there is no bridge. Now, based on the concept of the level playing field, and everyone knows that in sports, what is a level playing field, we built up the idea of the level telling field, so that everyone is on the same foot, has an equal voice, and can really, at that moment, discuss with each other. So it is a method and a place where every voice is really heard. And it is based on 3 elements. Next slide, please. First of all, it is based on recognition justice. You will immediately see what we do. Here we draw on the work of Fraser and Honneth, but I will not go deeper into it. So, but recognizing the other as an equal person is both the starting point and the outcome from the process. So if you're doing a dialogue, you start with recognizing the person, but at the end of the session, you recognize them again. So that's a very important element. And that is an emancipatory element into the level telling field method. Recognition means also that we take into account class, gender, origin, color, and things so. The second one is distributive justice. You have here the names of Rawls, Sen, and Fraser again. So the process must ensure that the outcome is positive for all participants, with particular attention paid to the most vulnerable in the process. So a level telling field, and that has to be for all dialogues when you do a co-production, strives for social change. If you have just a dialogue for small talk, it doesn't change anything. But if you're coming together with researcher, expert target groups, you want change, social change. And that's where we're going here. So the everyday's daily life must improve. That's the aim and the objective of a level telling field. So distributive justice, therefore, presupposes that all participants must be able to take part in the process on an equal footing. In concrete terms, this means that the participants are supported in accordance with their capabilities. Here too, the most vulnerable, the least vocal, and those with the fewest material, financial, and time resources are supported. The third is procedural. This ensures that everyone can participate on an equal footing. The first 2 forms of justice ensure that this is possible from the start to the finish. Again, maybe it's a little bit theoretical. Procedural justice is based on 3 principles. Very short. The first one, political listening, or listening with the fundamental intention of bringing about change. If you're going, I have got a lot of experience of dialogues with government, experts, and so on. And if you listen, and if those are not listening with the idea we have to change our mind, then the dialogue stops. So political listening is an essential element of each dialogue if you want to have social change. We So this aim must be embedded in the act of listening. And we here refer to Susan Bickford. The second principle is taking perspective. Donna Haraway is guide us here. Taking perspective recognizes every perspective, every experience, regards them as personally objective, and seeks commonality within these different perspectives. So Amartya Sen described this as comprehensive understanding. And the third principle is adopting a multi-perspective approach. So 3 perspectives if you want to have a dialogue. The multi-perspective approach means, and it is related to the 2 others, that requires you, to adopt multiple perspectives ourselves. You're not only thinking about your own perspective, but you're going to take others' perspectives on board in your mind. So you confront your own objectivity, you could say, with that of others. And this involves a reflection on one's own positional objectivity, through which we can arrive at a common ground. We call it a common ground. And the common ground is an essential element of the level telling field. It's there, it's where we meet, and from where we can set out and return to this point time and again. So the common ground is you could say, the result of that multi-perspective approach. It is an absolute point of reference. To resume, and I hope there is a new slide. Now, the other one, before this one. No. Yeah, just, okay. So, just, I'm shorting. So the level telling field, you see it a little bit, is a programmatic and analytical tool. And with these 3 principles, you can shape a dialogue, bridge between different perspectives, monitor a dialogue, and evaluate a dialogue. This is the first part of my paper. The second part, and now I will be very short. In the New Bouquet Foundation, I have read 2 days ago a Ghanaian proverb. I hope I pronounce it very well. It's Tikoro Nko Agjina. I hope it's something like that. That means that come together. You cannot discuss with yourself. You have to discuss with others. And that is a very important element of, if you want to do a level telling field, then we need, and therefore another slide please, then you need what we call a structure. And this is the structure, an alliance of knowledge where you do have the different perspectives that bring you together. I will not delve deep into it because I have just only 1 minute, you see. But the structure is best organized by a CSO of an NGO. Why? Next slide, please. Is that an NGO is used to what we call vertical and horizontal approaches. So there's top-down and horizontal approaches. NGOs work with grassroots organizations, but at the same time, they work also with the government. So that means it's vertical and horizontal. And if you have an NGO who can organize this with the 2 approaches, that is, they can bring a structure to the level telling field. So it is not only a participatory process, it is about social change. Next slide, please. And we called it, we said that it gives us the possibility to give a voice. And with that, I want to change, but a last slide where I want to see a picture. Yes, this one. This is an example of a level telling field that we here organized in this room together with the CMS. And it was really a level telling field with various representatives. We worked with 6 tables, 6 topics, relating to migration. And there were very interesting proposals came from those dialogues. And thanks to this conference, but also all these conferences that we have this year with the CMS, we can say that the CMS has the opportunity to create a real alliance of knowledge. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. So finally, we move across to Amos Langat from Bridging the Gap toward an African Ground Migration Knowledge.
Yeah, happy birthday, CMS. Yeah, thank you so much. The person who is talking is Dr. Amos Langat from Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, a senior research fellow under the Migrations, Actions and Displacement Plan for Sub-Saharan Africa. The question comes to this presentation is bridging the gap and centered migrations, which basically is the key thing. I want to see the slide. These gaps that we are preaching basically could be the issue that we don't know. Yeah, it could be the issue that migration is a big thing that involves complexity. And the question comes to our understanding that what is migrations? Migration basically stand on key pillars: people, movement, people moving in a given space, which is particularly the planet, induced by some dynamics, which could be environment, prosperity, and peace. So these are big questions that come to this understanding, which I highlighted that the African faces migration knowledge, and not only migration as a problem. Next slide. Yeah, these migrations dynamics that clearly faces Africa or shapes the movement of people could not only be, this could be treated as people moving or crossing borders or crisis fight or irregular movement, but as a broader pattern of adaptations, survival circulations, and social transformations. So these are total transformations. Migrations is actually movement of people as a functions of many dynamics, which basically we've seen as livelihood strategies, labor, opportunities, family, social networks, environmental pressures, and regional economic linkages. So these are the functions of people movements, or people moving, which definitely defines our migrations in this context. Next slide. And the key issue or the dominance narratives actually is incomplete. And why? Most of the time we have a common framing that Africa to Europe. They are moving from Africa to Europe. And crisis, irregularity, border control, and security issues, which is actually the global context of migrations as it has been framed. But the key reality actually in this paper, which its emphasizes that Africa to Africa, there are a lot of huge worrying trend statistics about Africa to Africa movement, labor and livelihoods, secular and seasonal mobility. And this narrative in this case is too narrow to explain how Africans movement in realities. Yeah, next slide. So, and what is the problem in this context? Yeah, actually, the crisis is not only in migrations governance, but it is in the migrations knowledge systems itself, centering the migrations knowledge systems. Because basically we can say that data, or who controls data, controls narratives. Yeah, who controls data, controls narratives. So basically we are saying in this context that Africans are bridging the gaps towards an African-centered migrations knowledge system. Yeah, so in this case, basically those are the key things that come out clearly in this context. Move. And this being a problem is basically that when we have wrong knowledge, basically we'll have wrong framing and wrong policy responses. Basically, as I've said, that data, or who control data, controls narratives, influences decisions, and also bring any kind of change he or she wants. So this is basically why this is a problem on the issues of centering the knowledge of migrations systems in Africa. Next slide. Yeah, actually, in this context, we apply some number of methods, which basically we combine multiple sources of evidence, focuses on understanding systems, structures, and also emphasizes on interpretations of our predictions. And the key concern for this was to understand how migrations knowledge is produced, used, and translated into policies in Africa. So this was the approach that basically we use in this paper. Move again. The next slide. Yeah, and the literature we structured in that manner that we have the literature review, we review the policy analysis, the conceptual synthesis, and these components were all integrated to have this coherent understanding of migrations knowledge framework. So, move to the next slide. So basically, we also reviewed a number of papers from 2010 to 2025. We saw the sources, the academic journals, the policy reports, institutional publications, and the key focus was on migrations, patterns in Africa, knowledge systems and data structures, epidemics and theoretical curves. And the key or the purpose for doing that was basically to identify how this migration knowledge is currently framed and produced in Africa. And we do a lot of examinations on governance framework, continental policies, institutional strategies, and also the key focus were mainly on evidence. How evidence is used in policy and gaps between research, decision making, data governance, and access. Basically, again, the key concern or the main purpose for that was to understand why research does not fully translate into policy. Why policy or the research does not translate to policy. So in that case, we also integrated all these processes to the point that we arrive at this development of structured framework to show the relationship between these key factors: researchers, policymakers, and community knowledge. This basically is the model that we want, building African-centered migrations knowledge system. Move down. The next slide, please. So in overview, basically this is what this migration, centering the migration knowledge in Africa, having literature review, policy analysis, conceptual analysis, And then once we have all these multiple sources or evidence streams, we can be able to integrate and generate a unified framework for this case. Next slides, please. Then the results, we were able to see some key major findings and evaluation of local knowledge, context-specific migration rationalities, and the issue of power, data power symmetries. So these findings, we can say collectively that it shows that migrations in Africa is complex, internally structured, and poorly captured by dominant external narratives. Yeah, it is actually on external narratives, not actually from the community knowledge narratives. Move to the next slide. So approximately on the statistical realities on African migrations narratives, we saw that approximately 21 million Africans live in another African country. So people moving from one African country to the next, according to, and then those are basically the statistics we saw in that aspect, whereby African migration is largely regional, labor-linked, and deeply embedded in internal mobility systems. Move to the next. So basically, these are just visualizations, distributions of Africans' migrations patterns. When we see from this one, it shows that the larger share of migrations involving Africans always take place or kind within the continent, which basically challenging the dominant narratives on external migrations. Yeah, so in this aspect, again, there's an evaluations of local knowledge, which is the key in these discussions, whereby the community knowledge remain weakly represented when we are developing these systems of knowledge. And these are the local realities, social applications, pastoral and seasonal mobility. So all of them, that it shows the context is rich and always least invisible in the formal migrations evidence system. Just move, I think I'm running out of time. Just only 3 minutes. 1 minute. So basically, these are just the visualizations on the paper. It shows how the dominance in migrations knowledge systems from high dominance to low dominance. Move down, let's just run through the slides because of the time. That is, and these are the key factors that shaping the narratives on migrations decisions in Africa. Actually, the pillars or what inform these decisions or discussions. Move down. Yeah, basically, I think I've also discussed about that. Move down. Yeah, and of course, this one also, it shows clearly on the discussions, and also this one, we've discussed on this. Move again. Yeah, so in short, we can say that Africa needs not only better migration policy, but a better migrations knowledge architecture. And as we conclude, migration in Africa is not simply about people movement, but it's about knowledge, power, representations, and policy relevance. And to have this understanding or to govern migration better, Africa must first understand migration on its own term. And as I conclude, whoever controls data shapes policy, influences decisions, and ultimately controls the narratives. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Thank you to all our speakers for keeping more or less the time. I'm not going to give out scores because I'm not sure how I do that. So pass over to Dr. Kofi Tachiasante, who's going to give us some comments as a discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks to our presenters, they've given us very rich food for thought. Oftentimes, the discussions about the relationship between evidence and policy tends to be simplistic, right? Does evidence influence policy? But they've moved beyond that, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for that, to give us some rich arguments, very rich data, but also novel concepts, data architecture, for instance, telling field, level telling fields, and the relationship between the experts or the researchers and the subjects of research. I'll preface my comments by making two brief observations about evidence or research and policy. One is that research is not just evidence, right? Research is, comes up with arguments, with perspectives, with contentions, even combat, as some scholars have put it. Which means that two researchers looking at the same evidence or data will come up with different conclusions. So now let's talk about policy. I think the notion that policy isn't based on evidence is often simplistic and maybe plain wrong. Most policy is based on evidence. We may not like the evidence. In fact, when you work with policymakers, you realize that internally there is often a very vigorous struggle over legitimacy. Different evidences are invoked, right? And what the perspective that often gains legitimacy or that comes out on top is based on ideology, on power, or on which faction within the policy-making realm has power. As Tandika and Kandawere said, tongue-in-cheek a while ago, if you look at structural adjustment, for instance, it came up on top at a time when there was very vigorous debate over what is now called the neoliberal wing of economics and heterodox scholars. And at the end of the day, it wasn't the better argument that won, it was the argument that was backed by money, right? So I think a question could be asked, does evidence need to always influence policy? For every issue that you take, you are going to have academics making 2, 3, sometimes 5 different points. And each contestant or actor within this debating sphere would insist that their perspective or their conclusion should influence policy. So as Michelle has shown, for every nurses being, I guess, exported to Germany, you have multiple perspectives over there. So I think that's maybe to set the context for the rest of the points I'll be making. Damien gave a very interesting presentation on collaboration between the Red Cross, Red Crescent, and African national societies, right? So I hope maybe during the Q&A you would get the opportunity to talk a bit more about the content of that research. But what I found interesting was the emphasis on local knowledge, right? Working with the people who are affected or who will be affected by the policy that this evidence is going to lead to. And taking their perspectives, right? So this idea that work with the community. But we know communities are not homogeneous. They are fragmented. They are laden with power. There can be as much exclusion, sometimes even more within the community than what is coming from outside. So how do you balance this tension? And I think in the paper you kind of gesture towards it. So again, it would be really nice to have you talk about that. And this is linked also to Michelle's paper. I like the idea of the level playing field, level telling fields, which is very nice. But we know in reality there is no level field anywhere. maybe only on the football pitch. But even then, the referees can be biased, as we saw in the recent African Cup of Nations. So again, you also gave a lot of indicators about what has to be done, the different justices that have to be brought to bear. But then there's a question as to, maybe we could call it refusal. Last year, I participated in a series of discussions regarding South Africa's presidency of the G20, and the question about how the financial architecture can be reformed, right? And a lot of the conversations among Africans that the architecture is not reformable. It needs to be bombed, and replaced with something else. There's been proposals, the new international economic order has been, the UN votes on it, and we always see the pattern. If you look at the votes and it's put on a map, you get a very good picture of the global south or the global north. And we saw it recently with the vote on slavery and reparations, right? It was the global south and the global north. So can this telling field and bringing together different actors actually legitimize an injustice with the language of inclusivity? Of course, there's also, the notion of perverse inclusions. Some actors, no matter how inclusive or accommodating we make a space, may not be able to participate at the level that more privileged actors can, because actors come with history and resources and whatnot. And finally, Amos, I liked your presentation a lot. Of course, the point you made that most African migration is internal is very important. In terms of influencing policy in Africa, I don't know how much. This is evidence that should influence policy in Europe, right? But we know, I don't think that is going to have an impact, because the policy in Europe is very political and politicized, right? I also find the debate about the recent migration crisis, of course, now there's a lot of talk about how it's self-imposed, right? When you bomb a region, people are going to be forced out, even if they don't want to. We see the same thing in the US, right? Sanctions and illegal kidnapping of presidents, and basically making life unlivable for people within their countries is going to lead to migration. In fact, I followed the early years of the Biden administration when Kamala Harris was tasked with migration. She went to Latin America, and we are going to fight the root causes. And the root causes for them was fighting corruption and misgovernance, not ending the sanctions, not ending the bombings, right? So again, this is important evidence, but it has to go even further back to look at history, to look at geopolitics. And finally, I think there's a hierarchy of knowledge and prestige. It's interesting that you mentioned how statistics is often valued beyond, fine-grained qualitative analysis. And I think that touches on something that was talked about in the earlier panel, which is that policymakers are busy, right? But I think, again, governance, policy making, it's all about ideology, about political commitment. If you read even the casual works of Kwame Nkrumah, those are, he read deeply and he wrote extensively, which means that, maybe sometimes we let policymakers off the hook. So with that, I would want to end here, and I'm sure we are going to have very lively conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. As chair, I'm now faced with the problem that I've been told we should be finishing in about 5 minutes to go for lunch. But I'm very aware that people are here and they've had maybe lots of thoughts. So what I'm going to propose is, rather than letting any of the panels speak anymore, if some people want to raise some points, some questions for either they want particularly speakers to respond to, or they want to just throw it into the group, then please do that, and I will let the speakers respond to you over lunch, because we are now between, this panel is now between us and lunch, and the time is against us. So, are there anyone who is...
Two from here.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Lawrence Saivani, former Liberian refugee. I'm much interested in to be able to comment about the last speaker. He talked about something like about 21 million African in the migrations. But one specific thing that I think I'm more interested in is that they should not treat Africa as a unit. When you do that, you'll be creating a blanket policy that may not be able to solve everybody's problem. Because people migrate from, let's say for instance, my homeland, Liberia, because of the civil crisis. People may migrate from Ghana for different reasons. People migrate from Nigeria from different reasons. So if you are talking about 21 million migrants from Africa, perhaps I think there must have been distinction as to the countries, because not all African countries are so much interested in migrating to other countries to live or for any other reason. So if we could be able to talk about, to give some specific countries by countries, to be able to give some percentage instead of using blanket, like to say 21 million African. Africa is not a country, it's a continent with different countries in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that's a point that it holds very generally. Okay, so there's someone else at the back, I think. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. I think the chair is looking at someone, but I have the mic, so I have the floor. I very much like the level telling fields. I was part of the project up to a point. And I think it ties in with the whole of government, whole of society type of policy pronouncements that you hear a lot within the development partners field. But I think that because of the power asymmetries that also exist, are we not falling into the trap of just hearing from everyone and then deciding what to do, what we plan to do anyway? Is it just a case of hearing everyone or taking decisions that actually take those views into consideration? Because I'm afraid we might be moving towards tokenism, where everyone is gathered around the room, your voice is heard, but then not all voices are the same. Thank you very much.
That's a challenge probably to be taken up over lunch and beyond. Yeah. So, is there anyone from this side?
Hello. Hi, everyone. So basically, my question is directed to Dr. Amos Kiri. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrongly. You made a recommendation, or you made a suggestion that it was expedient that Africans build an African-centered migration knowledge system. I wanted to ask that when you were doing your research or collating your paper, did you perchance come across any app that helps to connect the findings of researchers to those of policymakers? I feel that usually the African-centered knowledge system you're saying is available, but most of it is more in like a desk form, or should I say, you find them in libraries. So it's the automation of these findings that's the problem. So I would suggest that probably you could skew it down and introduce, with AI coming up, you could sort of capture that aspect, saying that some of these findings need to be automated so that they are easily accessible to both policymakers, researchers, and practitioners. That way information will not be locked up and stored, but would actually be in use. Thank you.
Thank you. That opens a whole new set of issues, which were interesting to follow up. I hope that can be taken up. Okay, and over this side, I think we have over this side. Oh, yeah. Front. All right. Right at the front. Yeah.
Thank you. Some of the root cause for migration, we have to be very real of our research, how some of these things really happen. As we are sitting here talking, in Nigeria, we have Boko Haram. In Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, we have insurgents. Togo, Benin, same thing is happening there. Even Ivory Coast, we have the Francophone here, Francophone there, Francophone here. And their system of government is being managed by France. And France is not part of Africa. France is dictating to them for ages. And when Africans surrounding Ghana is saying, we are tired now, leave us alone, let us manage our own affairs, then you bring in drones and you bring in missiles to create chaos. And with chaos, we are already 35 million population here in Ghana. And hardly we take care of ourselves. So if chaos started on this Francophone country surrounding us and everybody is running to Ghana, how do we handle that within the policy? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so very briefly.
Thank you. So I want to conclude with Nana's own. If we are doing the research, we should try and research in political leadership, the style they are using, which is also causing the migrations. Because they are our main problem in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a whole session to be made on those different questions that have been raised and the points that have been raised. I'm afraid that has to hold off for maybe conversations over lunch and through the rest of the time of this conference. For now, I can only thank our panelists and speakers and discussants, and thank you all for participating and keeping us going. It's now well past time for lunch, but that's what we're serving. So please enjoy the break now. And I don't know if any of the organisers want to tell us when we should be back. Does anyone from the organising group can they tell us when we are back? I would guess 1 hour, but you may hear otherwise. Okay, thank you. The lunch, I think, is now served. What time do you want us back?
Thank you very much. Lunch is served, ladies and gentlemen, so you can go for lunch. And we will reconvene for the plenary